Welcome to the Minnesota Black Robe Regiment channel. Have taken a few days off. Was waiting on a new webcam, which is what I'm shooting this with right now. Also had some things I was working on, so here we are. So the last video that I did was about my experience at Trader Joe's, where I had a confrontation with a couple of employees over my personal convictions over why I don't wear a facial covering, even though the governor has ordered us to do it here in the state of Minnesota. And as part of that conversation, if you will, the gentleman that was confronting me, I'm assuming he was the store shift manager, maybe he was a store manager, but he had made the statement that he had the right to refuse to do business with me, that as a private business, Trader Joe's can refuse to allow me entrance. And he's right, they can. But what I want to talk about in this video is the reality of what it means for businesses to have the right to refuse to do business over something like the failure of a customer or a client to not wear a mask, or not wear a facial covering. And one of the reasons I want to talk about it is because it's been the go-to line, the tagline for a lot of pro-mask, pro-facial covering people, that if you don't want to wear a facial covering, then don't shop at stores that require it. And then, of course, in many states, many jurisdictions, governors have mandated that to be in a store you have to have a facial covering. And so therefore now not only does the store as a private business have that right, that authority, they have the backing of the governor, which in many cases is ostensibly unenforceable. Many sheriffs in many jurisdictions have said, we're not going to enforce this, we're not going to have anything to do with it. Now, that being said, where does the line for a business or a corporation or a conglomeration, if you will, where does that line get drawn for them? Where can they refuse to do business with someone? So let's consider flower shops, bakeries, wedding planners, Christian bookstores. Where does the line get drawn? Who gets to make the decision over what is allowed for refusal of service and what is not? Now, obviously, refusing to do business with someone because you don't like the color of their skin pigmentation, you don't like their ethnicity, maybe you don't care for their religious perspective. Can you, as a business owner, refuse to do business with them? Anti-discrimination laws would say no, you cannot. And that also applies to Christian store owners who refuse to do business with anybody in the LGBTQ community, saying that it violates their religious conscience and they do not believe that they should be forced or should be required to do business with someone that they don't agree with. Now, is that okay? Are we all right with that? I would say, according to the First Amendment, we have to be okay with that. Now, people would ask me, well, then shouldn't you be okay with someone refusing to do business with someone who is of a different ethnicity? Well, I'm not okay with that personally, but are we okay with the concept or the idea of the government government getting involved and saying, you must do business with this person, even if you have a personal conviction as to why you cannot. Are we all right with that? Are we okay with that level of government involvement? And I would argue that we shouldn't be okay with that level of government involvement. And here's why. I despise, in another video I did, I talked about how much I despise. I hate people who foment and promote ethnic hatred. I hate them. I don't want to have anything to do with them. But when we start to say that you must do business with this person, you have no right to refuse to do business with this person, you have no right to refuse to hire this person, we can very quickly find ourselves going down a path wherein any special interest is going to be able to require or force you to do business with them, regardless of your convictions. And it can be made criminal. So not only could there be statutory fines involved with a business refusing to do business with someone, but they could literally lose everything that they have, and it could be based on a personal conviction, right or wrong. And part of the First Amendment is the freedom to, or the liberty to associate with and assemble with people that you agree with, people that you are aligned with. You have that right. But here's the deal. That First Amendment right also gives other people the right to not do business with you. So let's say that you have some white supremacist who sets up shop on a street corner, and he puts in his billing, his advertising, that he will only do business with whites, especially whites who agree with him. And then let's say across the street is a business that's owned by a Somalian, and that Somalian only will do business with other Somalians who speak his language, who share his religious perspective, which is by and large almost exclusively, there are obviously exceptions, going to be people who follow Islam. Now, is that okay? And should they be set up on opposite corners from each other? I hate that kind of discrimination. I despise it. But they have that freedom. They have that right. So, when I enter into a business and I choose not to wear a facial covering, and if that business chooses to not do business with me, they can do that. Now, governor of the state of Minnesota and the governor of other states have said, well, if they have legitimate exemptions, and some states allow for religious exemptions and other states do not, which there again I believe is a violation of the First Amendment. I don't believe that the governor of any state can override the First Amendment and say, it doesn't matter what your religious convictions are on this, I'm going to tell you you have to do it anyway. But a business has a right to say, you're not entering this business if you're not going to follow these guidelines, these rules that we have in place. And we're not going to let you in because the governor says we don't have to let you in because there's a mask mandate, there's a facial covering mandate in place. And I want that to be handled equitably. I want that to be handled across the board exactly the same way for every situation. Let the market decide on its own what businesses are going to stay open and which businesses are going to stay closed when it comes to things like refusing to do business with someone. I don't think that a gay-owned bakery should be forced to do a wedding cake for a heterosexual couple whose religious beliefs teach that homosexuality is a sin. And they're willing to preach on that. They should not be forced to do business with them any more than a gay or lesbian-owned flower shop or wedding planner should be forced to do business with a Christian couple whose church believes or denomination believes that homosexuality is a sin. Freedom of association, the freedom of assembly applies to everyone across the board, period. But that's not what we have in the United States. The freedom of assembly, the freedom of association, is measured out based on whatever the current political and prevailing cultural trends are. Period. Which is why lawsuits in places like Colorado and Washington and other places have been brought against bakers and flower shop owners and wedding planners, because they said, no, I'm sorry, because of the nature of your relationship, I cannot do business with you. I can't take you on as a client. Either the First Amendment applies to everyone, and I'm going to use a word I hate, with equity, or it doesn't apply to anyone. So we have to have parity. There needs to be parity on this. And if there can't be parity, then there can be no discrimination at all. The First Amendment has to apply to everyone with equity. It has to. Otherwise, as an amendment, it doesn't mean anything. And the entirety of the Bill of Rights crumbles to the ground. As always, I welcome your thoughts, your pushback, your feedback, even your insults. Resist tyranny. Stand up for the Constitution. Fight for what is right. Sic Semper Tyrannis.